Hey, guess what? More bad news for the Democrats. Young people are over Democrats and Republicans, new data show. What that means for 2022? Well, what that means is it's time for a viable new major party, the People's Party, which are now on the ballot in Florida. I think that's what we need to do. What does that mean for 2022? It means low voter turnout. That's what that means for sure. All this offering young people absolutely nothing to vote for. How's that working out? How's that going? So you mean so there's a society with crippling amounts of debt, a shrinking job market, collapsing climate, and unaffordable housing that isn't inspiring young people to vote? I mean, because you have people that are vowing to do nothing about it. Joe Biden, by the way, pushing his deforestation inside the United States, just like Trump was. Why aren't young people inspired by all the bipartisan efforts that brought them the Iraq war, predatory lending, fracking, skyrocketing rent? They're not into that? What the F? Losing Virginia's governor race isn't the only development from Tuesday's election that has Democrats concerned heading into the vital midterms. Vital. Turnout among their you might have Republicans doing corporate shit instead of Democrats doing corporate shit. Oh, that's vital. Turnout among their youngest, most progressive voters was down by stunning numbers in otherwise high turnout gubernatorial races. Gubernatorial, I love that word. Guba. It's a gubernatorial race. I love that it's gubernatorial. By the way, yet it was high in a local race. The turnout was high in a local race where a 27-year-old activist who ran on defunding the police won. Maybe giving people something to vote for is the solution. So we got to do a whole thing on defunding the police or abolish the police, because that's not what they mean. Nobody wants to abolish the police. They want to reform the police. I know police reform has never worked, but that's what they really mean. And it's scary to people when you say abolish the police. And defund seems similar. I know what they mean. They mean instead of sending a cop out to a person with mental problems house who's experiencing, you send a social worker. You don't send a guy with a gun. Hey, why do we have guys with guns writing parking tickets? Why do we have guys with guns doing traffic stops? Really? That's what I want a guy with a gun to do? Just pulling people over because they made a wrong turn with a gun? So maybe if we stop that, I think we should stop that. I got that idea, I think, from Lee Camp. The share of votes coming from Virginians under the age of 30 was just 10%. So here's the numbers. The share of votes coming from Virginians under the age 30 was just 10%. Last November, they accounted for 20% of Virginia's votes. So the voting populace under 30 got cut in half during this election. What do you think of that? It's almost like you need young people to win or something. Initial estimates based on the exit polling indicate voter turnout among adults under 30 dropped by approximately 62% in Virginia, compared to a 15% drop among voters 30 and older. It's a warning sign for Democrats. Oh, is it? A warning they're going to ignore because it didn't come from their donors. Gen Zers, voters more likely than any other generation to support Democratic candidates, according to Pew, are also now the voters most likely to say they no longer support the job performance of President Joe Biden and other established Democrats. Data on young voter turnout in September's California recall election, recently obtained by NBCLX, also revealed a substantial drop. Turnout among voters under 30 fell by approximately 48% compared to the 2020 presidential election. The turnout numbers, as well as recent polling, suggest Democrats suffering due to young progressives' frustration over the glacial pace of progress in fulfilling Biden's campaign promises on social programs, climate change, and civil rights. Glacial pace is melting glaciers. While the young voter drop-off didn't stop Governor Gavin Newsom of California from surviving his recall election by a 24-point margin, Democrats trying to preserve their narrow 8-seat House majority don't feel like they'll have any room for error in 2022. And a recent poll revealed only 36% of voters under 30 said they considered President Biden liberal. The lowest of any age group polled. Only 24% consider him honest and trustworthy. Also the lowest of any. And look at that. Look at that. Biden responded that he has no empathy for the young people. At least he was being honest. Young voters are also dissatisfied with leading Democrats, such as Nancy Pelosi. Her approval rating among Gen Zers is 23%, far lower than among any other generation. Well, I don't understand why a almost a late 70-year-old woman who's been in politics her whole life, who's a 100 millionaire, who doesn't give a shit about anybody except her donors, and can't even speak without her teeth clattering around. I wonder why she doesn't connect. Researchers say young voter impatience shouldn't be confused with apathy. Gen Zers, they care very deeply about these issues, said Carolyn DeWitt. She's the executive director of the nonpartisan advocacy group Rock the Vote. They're starting to reach the tipping point of no turning back, and they're the ones who are inheriting these messes. They want bold action on them, and they want that fast. People want action from their government, and their government is captured by corporations, so they're never going to get it until there's a real revolution or until there's a third party that can actually make something happen. Now, the chances of a third party happen are slim. But guess what? The chances of anything good happening without one are even slimmer. The shift in younger politically active demographics coincides with a shift away from both the Republican and the Democratic establishments and a move towards specific policy priorities. That's what I say, the People's Party. They got to run their party on issues. Run your party on ending the wars and investing that money back here, a living wage, student debt relief, and Medicare for all. That's a winning platform. And you don't have to talk about anything else. Let's remember, when Lincoln was elected, the Republican Party was a regional party centered around the idea of anti-slavery. And he got elected. Here's friend of the show, David Strauss. Remember when Democrats... Oh, we'd already read this one. By the way, here is... you want to hear why young people don't give a shit? Why people don't give a shit? Listen to this. She's supposed to be a progressive fighter, fighting the Democratic establishment. Listen to this garbage.
One of your fellow progressives in the House, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, says that he's exceeded her expectations and expectations for progressives. Do you agree?
I do. I think that this has been a really interesting time for us to see how the progressive movement at large, all the progressive voters, young voters, voters of color that came out and turned out for the president in November, helping us to win the White House, the Senate, and the House, and the pandemic and the way in which it has just really shined such a bright light on all the inequalities that have existed. I think President Biden has risen to the moment, and I really do give him an A in what he's done so far.
Exceeding expectations is one way of putting it. Mass deportations, kids still in cages, cannot canceling student debt, increased police budget, bomb Syria, no wealth tax, no health care, no minimum wage, no family child leave, no nothing. The problem is not messaging. The problem is failure to deliver. Support for third-party political party is at a high point. That's what we need. 62% of adults say the parties do such a poor job representing American people that a third party is needed. An increase from 57% in September. That's from Gallup. 62%. The poll shows 50% of U.S. adults identifying as political independents. So half the country is now politically free of a party. So that means only 25% of the country considers themselves Democrat and only 25% considers themselves Republican or thereabouts. The biggest party is the independents. They're double the size of either party, corporate party. So that's who the People's Party are going to be going after. In several election years, 2006, 8, 12, Americans were divided as to whether a third party was needed. But since 2012, Americans have consistently favored the idea. Americans' appetite for a third party has never been greater in Gallup's nearly 2 decades of polling on the subject. And now a majority of Republicans are joining the usual majority of independents in wanting that option. The People's Party could really make a big dent. A populist person appealing to lefties, righties, and people in the middle who are disaffected from these two corporate parties could win. Certainly get in the debates and change everything. I want to let you know, on November 6th, we're going to be in Baltimore. November 11th, we're in Tempe, Arizona. November 12th, we're doing Los Angeles and Studio City. November 19th, Los Angeles and Studio City. And then Thanksgiving weekend in Portland, Oregon. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all those tickets.